Man, I just really look at you just petting the beard. The whole beard is being
Gotta
pet.
look good for everybody.
You want to look good for you know that's like being recorded right now, right?
Yes, I do.
It's some beard petting over there. It's a strange thing. Good. So now you're gonna be self-conscious about it.
I'm probably gonna do this constantly. Like,
I love that. So you got like a good stack of games on the top of the shelf there. Do you have more games on that shelf?
on this shelf, I just have these games. I brought a lot, or these on this shelf, I just have these games. I brought a lot of my games home with me because they were taking up too much space here in the office, and Bowen was having an issue. So
Bowen was having an issue with your collection of games?
yeah, well, he just felt that I was overpowering the room with the amount of board games I had in
It
here.
wasn't fitting the decor.
That's right. It's exactly right.
It didn't fit the motif he was after.
Yeah, well, they didn't really fit the bookshelf anymore either. So
Oh no, there was too
no,
many there.
yeah,
I remember collecting some board games when I was running the bunker.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I had a DC superhero Monopoly game. It
nice.
went
That's like
missing.
yeah.
I was very
Monopoly is one of those games that just like tries to make a copy of anything that they can.
yeah. Oh
Any
yeah,
TV show, they'll make a game off of it.
yeah. I think if they could figure out like they would do like a strawberry shortcake Monopoly somehow, like or
Yeah.
Care Bear Monopoly. Oh, that'd be amazing. Care Bear Monopoly. No, you know what would be amazing? Care Bear Risk.
Yes. Yes, it would.
Care Bear Stare. I think that'd
Yeah,
be awesome.
I played games when I played a lot of those games when I was younger, but I think Monopoly was one of those games where like eventually you just get angry at each other because
Yeah,
somebody.
it's the trading, right?
Yeah.
At least I always got angry. It was like this purposeful. I'm not going to trade with this person, so then that way they can't have any opportunity to win, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's devious.
Yeah. And that's kind of where you come into the different styles of games. Some games are very much like one person really wins, the other person, people just like they just lose completely. Or there's games where you all are equally contributing to the game through the whole way through, or like there's different types of games in that way.
Huh. Hey, welcome everyone here. Those of you guys who are checking things out tonight. Well, welcome back to Pathway Late Night or Late Night with Pathway. We have Tyler Blatz with us here. Look at that. We got the gun salute with him. It's awesome. Now, I don't know how many of you know Tyler that well, so hopefully tonight you'll get to know him a little bit better. But Tyler is our youth director. He hangs out with our leaders, our teens, and yeah, just introduces them to the gospel. He's discipling them. But that is not all that there is to Tyler. Tyler is a guy who uh, would it be a fair way to express it to say that you're an avid board game collector?
Yes, I would say that's probably correct. Yeah.
Okay, so and everyone, just in case you were wondering, Tyler doesn't just go into a store to find a board game. Tyler, uh, correct me if I'm wrong, Ty, but you actually go on Kickstarter to find board games that are new and exciting, and I think especially that nobody else has heard of yet.
Yeah, it's true. I used to just collect random, like any board game I could get my hand on, but now I usually collect like very specific ones that I know that I'm going to like, and that I know people are going to want to play with me because you can have like 100 board games and nobody wants to play them with you, and that's not really interesting.
There,
So.
there was a game you introduced us to as a staff. Oh, what was it? It was a card game. It's like monsters.
Oh yeah, like campy creatures.
Yeah, Campy Creatures.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
that one was a lot of fun. Can you remind us the gameplay of that one? Like, how does that one?
Yeah, so you play the game as like a mad scientist trying to capture humans, and you're using your monsters to kind of do that. And it's a bluffing game, so each of you are going to play cards that have monsters on there with special abilities, and those abilities will allow you to capture more or less humans depending on what you want to do for that round. And so it's this game of like bluffing each other with, and it's just a fun, cool, artsy game.
Right. It creates a lot of laughter and a lot of fun that way. I mean, I know your favorite thing to do in a board game, Tyler, is to win.
Yes.
I know that's certainly one of my favorite things to do, right? There's just something fun about it. Um, and so that's neat. Now, for those of you who are just checking in, here with Tyler Blatz, why don't you just say hi? Let us know that you're here, and we can carry on walking forward together. But we are talking about leisure, recreation tonight. We are talking about the impact of play on just even in the adult world, the what it does for us, what it does to us. And so that's what we're talking about today. So if you would in the chat, just let us know, hey, what is your favorite recreation activity to be a part of? Some people are into sports, some people are into gardening, some people are into collecting toothpicks. I don't know, like whatever your favorite recreation to be a part of would be good. Oh, there you go. This is right away. We have somebody who has a game that they want to show us, and it is called Throw Burrito. Tyler, this is
Uh-huh.
a person that you have introduced to an interesting game.
Yes. PJ Friesen, he's one of our youth leaders. He definitely knows this game because we played it together.
And so tell us what Throw Burrito is.
That's basically the whole point of it is to throw burritos at each other. It's like a card game intermixed with a dodgeball game, but the dodgeballs are burritos.
Okay, now to be clear, not like an actual burrito that you're gonna go to like Bar Burrito or that burrito store. It is an actual like stuffy of a burrito, right?
It is a stuffy of a burrito, but we've talked about incorporating real burritos to make it more fun.
I think that'd make it fun. Now, Sheila here has a way to make it fun too, I suppose, with her axe throwing. Now, I suspect it's a little different. I've never gone axe throwing. You ever gone axe throwing?
Nope.
I've really thought about it, but I've seen a lot of these YouTube videos where the axe just bounces right back at people. And I just don't want to be one of those people.
Yeah, I understand. I've done that with throwing knives before. We'd throw knives, and I would always get the wrong side into the wood, and then it would bounce back. It's terrifying.
Yeah, very terrifying. No, that's great. I love laughter. I love play. I love the opportunity to interact in the same room with people doing these kinds of things. And so I think that there's a lot of value in adults playing. And I think, especially when we are in a space of time right now where it is difficult to be able to connect well with people, I think that leisure or play matters all the more.
Hmm.
So, what is your absolute favorite board game that you have collected?
Like my personal, or you're
Yeah,
asking?
absolutely. We can say hi to a few people who are too actually while we're at it. So take a minute to think about it. I'm just going to say hi to a few people here that are saying, that they are present with us. And so, of course, PJ Friesen is there. So hi to you, man. Neil, Sheila, Kate, um, and we got Jericho. Who is that? That's a cool name. Jericho 1415. Don't know who this, but he's calling us dudes and dudettes.
Or
So
she?
what's that?
Or she?
Or she? Yep, that's correct. That's very correct. Yes. So welcome here, everybody. We are talking about play, talking about how that impacts life. And very specifically, we got Tyler here from our youth ministry who's going to about to tell us his favorite game. Oh, it's Cebu. Good to see you, buddy. I was expecting to see something about Thanos if it was you, man. Um, Kate says that her favorite game to play is Miles Born. You ever play that one, Tyler?
Never played that one. Nope.
We
Sounds
would
like a
play.
European game.
What's that?
Sounds like a European game.
We would play that with our kids when our kids were younger. It's a lot of fun. It's literally just about how quickly you can get enough cards to speed and get points and things. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun that game. So that's pretty cool. Okay, you're about to tell us your favorite board game to play.
Okay, my favorite board game currently to play is a game called Root. It's a board game that it takes place in the middle of a forest, and each player gets a different faction or character to play, and each character plays differently than the other person. So it's an asymmetrical game where everybody is doing something different, and it takes a little while to get to know what your character does, but then also to understand what everybody else is doing. And so it's a game that is deep. I really like games that involve a lot of mechanics and a lot of like thinking and strategy. And so that's my current favorite game. And there's like 8 different factions that you can choose from. So the mixture is always different, and you never know exactly how the game is going to play out.
That sounds really interesting. So, what would be the point of the game?
The point of the game is to rule the forest, essentially.
Mm. So, it's a forest domination game instead of like a global domination game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, what you're saying is you have a desire to globally dominate.
I wouldn't say it's my ultimate desire.
Am I making you uncomfortable now?
A little bit, yeah.
No, that's good. And yeah, it's interesting, right? So, what when you have an opportunity to play board games with people, for example, because I know that you like it a lot, and we certainly enjoy it as a staff. Um, what is it about it that is attractive to you?
Well, as you mentioned before, one of the purposes of a game is to win it, and that is a great motivator to play games. But I think another great motivator in playing games is the fact that it brings people together. I'm like, just for instance, like especially when I was younger, I'm not someone who can make a lot of small talk. I'm not. I'm just not good at it. Like we can talk about things that are deep, but you can only talk about those things for so long, and then you're kind of just sitting across from the table, looking at each other, drinking coffee, and games just have a way of bringing people together into something that connects them and brings people, and it kind of just brings everybody together in a more real way. And yeah, for me, it's a place to connect with others. So I do try to win games, obviously, but for me, really, the connection piece is more important. And just you can kind of get to know somebody by the way they play games. Some people might be like really by the rules and like want you to follow the rules exactly, and then you're
Oh,
gonna
is
have
that
people.
is that right, Tyler? Follow the rules exactly.
That would be me. But there would be other people who are okay with bending the rules or making their own house rules to make the game more fun. And so like there's a different variety of people that come together and play games, and you get to learn and experience a lot about each other when you come in and play games together. When you might not be able to when people are just talking normally because their guards are down. You're having fun with one another. You're interacting in a way that lends itself to getting to know each other better, I would say.
Hmm. No, it's just so for you then the whole notion of like play, like recreation, um, it's an opportunity for community. It's an opportunity to connect with people. You learn more about them. They learn more about you, and then there's some growth that comes along with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's good. I certainly enjoy. I just enjoy any game really. That social aspect of it, the idea of being able to connect with people. But one of the ones that I was introduced to, well, it was actually at a staff Christmas. I think it was called Wix.
Yeah.
I think it was called
No,
Wix.
no, sorry, Dixit. Dixit.
Oh, Dixit. That's what it is. Wix is our web host.
Yeah.
That's so different. Okay. Yeah, it was called Dixit. And the whole, for those of you who are checking this thing out, Dixit is a game where the whole goal is to try and guess what's going on in another person's mind. I know that sounds weird, but everyone is given a number of cards that look like just a bunch of different pieces of art. And let's say Tyler is the guy who is wanting everyone to put cards down for him to look at, based on a word or a phrase that he uses. He'll say a word or a phrase. We have a card in our hand, and we then put it down, the card that we think best represents whatever it is that he's wanting to say. And then those cards all get flipped up, and everyone gets to vote on which one they think is better, and you get points, all this kind of stuff. It's really intriguing to see how people's brains work with that kind of gaming. The whole idea of uh, word association with imagery, and just seeing how it plays out. It's actually quite a fun game and changes almost every time you play it. So that's a good time. How about you guys online? What kind of game do you like to play? Um, or do you not like to play for that matter? Like maybe you don't like gaming at all in any way, shape, or form. And there are those out there who just find it to be a distraction, actually, to some extent. But tonight we're talking about play. We're talking about recreation. And so Tyler and I, we were doing a little bit of research on this, and there's a lot of interesting things out there. Read a guy who says that all animals think, but only man plays. I thought, well, that was wrong. My daughter's cat plays, my dog plays, and I've seen animals play in the wild. Tyler, you were saying you were watching something today.
Hmm. Yeah, I watched a TED talk on play, and this guy who runs the National Institute for Play down in California was talking about how polar bears and even like huskies were playing with each other. Like they even though they're not like in Alaska and like food can be scarce for polar bears, like they when the signal for the dog with play happened, the polar bear reciprocated and they were able to like just play with each other, which is not typical of creatures to do that, but it did happen. So yeah, and they did it. There was a bunch of other interesting studies. Like there was a study done with rats that showed that those who learned how, like rats that could play when they were younger, were more adapted when they became older. So, like for instance, they put a scent of a cat in a cage between the two different groups of rats: the rats that had learned to play when they were younger, and the rats that were restricted from playing when they were younger. And the ones that were restricted from playing when they were younger kept on hiding and actually ended up dying, where the rats who learned to play when they were younger actually went out and explored after a while and tried to experiment and tried out different things. So play actually helped them develop as as adolescents into adults.
That's interesting because they say the same thing for children as well, right? Like the ability to be able to navigate the world around them and the impact that play has on that, right? Like so you're playing at recess and you're navigating the grounds that you're on and different kinds of play like tag and all those sorts of things and your brain is developing in terms of strategies. And so it's yeah, that's really really interesting. Play I think is something that is common to most of sentient creation, we'll say, right?
Mhm.
And that was an interesting thing. I looking at the topic of play, certainly, obviously, like I'm a pastor, and I'm thinking about it. Like, where does it fit into our walks as believers? What kinds of things should we be involved in, not be involved in? But even moreover, um, we are created in the image of God. God is a God who, Scripture speaks about Him having joy. Jesus talks about that his prayer would be that we would have joy and that our joy would be made complete. And so there isn't this stoic sense of who God is. Um, I actually think that God played a few practical jokes in the Bible. One of my favorites is when the Philistines had stolen the Ark of the Covenant, and their god Dagon was in the temple that they had put the Ark of the Covenant in, and the soldiers are standing outside, and they suddenly hear this loud crash and they go inside and the statue or the idol of Dagon is suddenly like laying down on the floor, and so then they pick it up and they come back out, and then a little while later they hear this big crash again, and so they go back inside and the Dagon is lying on the floor in front of the Ark of the Covenant. Only this time his head was removed, and to me that just seems like a little bit of a joke, right? Like just God saying, "Hey, look at this." I do think God can be somewhat playful. um, Jesus actually tells some jokes in the scriptures. Who of you would give your child a snake if he asks for a loaf of bread? That's actually, it doesn't sound terribly funny, but it's actually an old joke. Um, the whole idea that would be a ridiculous thing. So I think that God definitely has a place for recreation and play in our lives. What do you think of that, Ty?
I think absolutely, and I think even like in terms of like when Jesus would tell parables and like, he would have those ridiculous contrasts. It was a way of relating to people. It was a way of like breaking down boundaries so they could understand and come to know who he was. And even just in terms of like what I do as a youth director in our church, like games for our students is a way to break down some of those barriers that we they might be initially. Like it has to be something to invite somebody into, something that they can take part in together. And so I think it's a great tool for bringing people together when there isn't maybe a lot of similarities or not even a lot of knowing each other, but having a system where someone can jump in and be like, okay, you're a part of this. This is how it works, and now we do this together, kind of thing, is really really cool.
Yeah, the whole idea of like for ministry, right? Like that recreation or play is able to kind of diffuse things a little bit, right? Like you go into a scenario and everybody's kind of in the same boat. Nothing really crazy serious is taking place. It's just a natural entry into the developing of a relationship or opening up of a conversation.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely like an element of hospitality that comes along with games and with play and with that kind of stuff.
Hmm, that's interesting. Um, more articles that we were looking at. One of the ones was talking about play. It was a theologian talking about it, and he was suggesting that play was connected with Sabbath. And so the whole idea of like when you spell recreation, for example, it's creation, recreation. And there's a lot of people who are suggesting that our leisure activities, our recreation is intended to kind of rebuild us a little bit, right? Like, so we have this time of work and then we have this time of recreation. And the time of recreation is intended to restore us, to rebuild us after a time of work or heavy lifting, by whether it's emotionally or mentally or anything else like that. So I think, what do you think of that? The idea that play or recreation could be associated with Sabbath, the day of rest. What do you think of that,
Yeah,
Tyler?
yeah, I definitely think that could be a part of it. Like the whole idea of resting is like not working, but having that time alone, or maybe not even alone, but at home with your families. And like I think play is almost like a direct result of that time spent together alone. Because when you're together, I mean, play just kind of happens naturally. It's not something you always have to try for. Sometimes when the opportunity presents itself, you just kind of you kind of have fun. You kind of go for it, kind of thing, right? Like
You,
I
you
think of like
you have something in mind when you say that. Do you have an
yeah.
example?
Like I just think of I think of myself, and when I think of like when I'm stuck alone with a person for too long, I automatically start playing pranks on them because it's fun. Like I kind of know them a little bit, and I get to just have fun with them by teasing them or by having fun with them. So
Much like our advertising for tonight, right? We had that that image there, had the play button. It says press play.
mm-hmm.
We actually got somebody from our congregation who pressed that button over and over and over again, and we're wondering why it wasn't doing anything. That's our early April Fools, for anybody out there. So if you see that image and you start pressing play, thank you. We appreciate the joy that we receive from you doing that. But it is something playful that goes along with that. The idea of it being connected to the Sabbath, though, I think that's an important one. Oh, Sibu says he did. He started pressing play. Thank you, Sibu. That brought me joy. um, yeah, there's something about the idea of play and of Sabbath rest. The idea that we are to have a time of work, but then also a time of rest in it. Um, I was looking at an article here. I'm just trying to pull it up, make myself some room here. Looking at an article here talking about in Elizabethan England, the Puritans were very negative about things like play and theater. Uh, so there were some valid reasons for it. It could be obscene and so on. But on the whole idea of theater, it rubbed them the wrong way. And so for them, um, they weren't here for entertainment but had a higher calling. Have you ever come across people who would say something to that effect? Like the idea that, look, we're not here to fool around. We're not here to play. We're here to do the serious work of ministry, the serious work of the Lord. And there's no room for anything else. You ever come across something like that?
like you're asking me if I've ever come across something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely have come across people like that, and yeah, that's it's just no fun. It's not as joyful to be in environments like that. I think there has to be an element of some laid backness and sometimes having fun or having like those times of um, interaction with each other that isn't just about work allows you to enjoy what you're doing more. Like it's not just the task, but it's actually the enjoyment of doing it with people and maybe even doing it in creative ways.
Right. Yeah, and even in that, right, like in the creative ways, there's a variety of opportunities to get involved in a variety of different things, and that could bring us joy and you could say playfulness or distraction, recreation, something that, again, the idea behind of leisure is that it restorative, for us, right? Like I actually do believe that there's some legitimacy to it being connected to Sabbath. Like if you think about it, Sabbath is this day of rest. And I get that, but I often have people ask me, okay, so Sabbath is supposed to be a day of rest. What do I do? So for those of you who are checking things out now, I really want to know, like, what do you do? What does your day of rest look like? How do you utilize the idea of recreation or leisure to be able to be something that restores you, rebuilds you, and while you're letting us know, you're typing to us. Um, I think it's also important for us to talk about things from uh, the the perspective that there is something just natural for us to move in the direction of enjoyment, move in the direction where there is laughter, and I think that that has a lot to do with being created in the image of God, right? Like God gave us laughter. Okay, how do we use that? Like, what does that do in our lives? And I can find laughter specifically to be something that can be quite restorative. Maybe you've had just a really tough day, and laughter. You're with somebody and they just make you laugh, and it kind of goes from there. This is one of my favorites. Are you ready, Tyler? Everybody else, this is fantastic. Thank you, Ken Thiessen. 3 naps a day is a good start. That is fantastic. I I will confess that I had a nap today when I got home from the office, and at least one nap a day was already pretty good. But three naps, and wait a second, you work all day. How are you? Oh, right, we're talking about the Sabbath. Okay, no problem. Right. So you enjoy napping. That's fantastic. And you know what? There is something restorative about that, right? Like the whole idea of rest in that sense. How many of you use leisure play to be able to restore yourself a little bit? Again, I go back to the idea that we're creating the image of God. We have laughter. We have, I mean, certainly we have tears, and we have all these other pieces of who we are. But there's something about that, right? Naomi says, what does she say here? Yeah, not having any agenda and just being able to just relax and hang out with people, right? Like that, it doesn't have to be so planned all the time, right? Tyler, have some of your favorite times been unplanned?
Oh, I would say absolutely. Yeah, like a random game day where someone's like, "Hey, you want to play a game?" Or, yeah, something like that, or like a spontaneous trip or a surprise of some kind. It's really fun. Yeah, and I would say like you even talked about like what do people do for rest. I think I've talked to many people in the past who like I've talked to them like, "What do you do for rest?" And they're like, "I don't even know how to do that. Like, how do you rest?"
Yeah. How do you
Yeah.
rest? Yeah, there is something significant about um, the whole idea of recreation. I can't get past even just how it's spelt, like recreation. It is that idea of rebuilding, restorative. Um, I have to admit that I don't always do that very well. I really don't. Look at that. Yeah, Neil, I love that idea. You go for a drive, go into nature, seeing the beauty of it all. Um, I find that especially at night when it's a clear night, um, you don't have any light pollution. You're able to just see the sky and all the stars and everything. There's just something peaceful about that. I really appreciate that very much. That's a good one. I like that. How about for those of you who get involved in leisure activities? Like what does play look like in your life? What does play look like? I mean, in our office, we have a tendency to play practical jokes on Tyler.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, it's good times. Tyler's not always so thrilled about them, but I think I hid your laptop once in the ceiling.
Not just mine, yes, but yeah,
Not just
multiple.
yours? Did I
No,
hide his laptop?
Bowen's. Yeah,
I don't remember hiding Bowen's laptop.
you did.
I did.
Yes.
See, I'm a horrible, horrible person. I don't even remember the things that I do. It's not bad. Not bad. We really enjoy escape rooms as a family. I know that like last summer, we didn't get to do it, but there was one summer that we were able to go out and do some of the escape rooms in Winnipeg. My goodness, that's fun. Like we're building unity with each other. There's it's a completely different way of thinking because you're trying to solve problems together, and there's just something about being together in that space, right? Like and just enjoying, um, yeah, just unraveling clues and again that social aspect of what it means to be together. I think actually that there's something unique about that. Siwu says that going golfing. Oh, that was Naomi. Sorry, going golfing with her husband and fishing. Yeah, for sure. That's something that builds. And Sivu going golfing all year. It's winter 10 months of the year up here, right? Look at that. And Naomi plays board. Okay, what kinds of board games? What games are you playing out there, Naomi? And everybody else, again, the idea of what does it look like for you to relax, to unwind. There's something unique about it. There are some benefits to doing it. The whole idea of de-stressing comes along with it. Some people have suggested, one of the articles I was reading, Aristotle. You guys remember that guy? Aristotle placed great importance on recreation. He called it leisure. He believed that it was needed to have time of leisure in order to be fully human. That's an interesting one to me. So, in order to be fully human, you need to have a time of leisure. And so, for him, therefore, those who in society who worked without time of leisure were incapable of being fully alive, he thought. What do you think of that? If it's just all you ever did was work and no leisure, no recreation, no play, do you think you're fully alive at that point? What do you think, Tyler?
I think that life is kind of becomes a drag at that point. I saw another what's it called, a quote from a guy from Brian Sutton Smith who was from New Zealand, and he said that the opposite of play is actually is not work, it's depression. And like if your life is only work and only things that you have to do for the sake of it, I feel like your life can fall kind of into this place where you see like there's no enjoyment in it anymore.
I find that a lot of people say it like this. They say like it just feels like one day runs into the next, that there's just no seemingly an end to it. That was interesting to me. Some people are telling us motorcycle rides. Yeah, yeah. I know a lot of people that find that incredibly relaxing and de-stressing. PJ tells us that, look at that, a lawn chair and a good book, and of course what Ken says. So there you go. Lawn chair and a good book. There is something about just unwinding by yourself as well, right? I mean, yeah, I think those things are important as well. Naomi, I asked you earlier what games you're playing, and here we go. Scotland Yard. I've played that game. Oh, Tyler's taking notes. He's going to catch some of these games. What is Splendor? I don't think I've ever heard of that. 5 minute dungeon. Cover your assets.
I heard about that game twice today already, so I'm
Have you
definitely
really?
yeah.
I don't know anything about it. I'm going to have to look up some of these things. Ticket to Ride. We actually have the European version of Ticket to Ride. So that's a lot of fun, right? Trying to build these
Mhm.
trains. That's good. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, there is something unique and awesome about these things, right?
Mhm.
Naomi also says that the whole idea of sitting around a fire can be something that's relaxing as well. I think it's interesting, like because when we talk about play, the idea of play for us often denotes the notion that we're being childish or immature. But if you think of play from the perspective of this is something that God created us with, and that it is natural part of who we are, and that it's restorative, then we allow ourselves those spaces for leisure. We allow ourselves those spaces for rest. I think this is a really important one because there are people who legitimately don't know how to relax. They don't know how to rest. And I think this is an important topic for us.
Even just going off of what you said about how play and leisure can be restorative, like I was looking through some articles today, and I was even talking about how relationships benefit from playing games with one another. Like the idea of you learn how to engage the other person and to rebuild things, like like when you have fun with somebody, you don't remain angry with them, or you don't keep things against them, or it's kind of this idea of how leisure can rebuild relationships with people over time, and
Hmm.
having a relationship of knowing that you can have fun together is actually helps the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. She was telling us about a game here that he likes. What is it called? I don't think I've ever heard of this one. Rails and Sales. Rails. I'm gonna have to get together with Sibu and play this game. We'll invite Sibu to one of our gaming nights. How's that? That'd be a good time. Actually, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm hardly ever having an opportunity to play anything. I am one of these guys. I will confess to you, I am one of these guys that does not play well. Like I'm not good at relaxing. I'm not good at. Um, I've always struggled with having a day of Sabbath. Um, Knowing how to allow myself to be restored, because I sometimes I feel guilty for having just some leisure time. And so that's a difficult one. Sam Reimer says, "Are you ready? Here it is, people. It's a game called Pandemic." What? Okay,
Well,
I don't. Do you know this game, Tyler?
oh yeah, it's very popular.
Okay, tell me about this, because I don't think I've heard of this before.
This is a cooperative game that you have to work with everybody around the table to stop the pandemic from happening, and it's just spreading everywhere around the world. And you're working as a team of scientists or whatever to stop it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Some people think it is.
You are not one of them.
But it's not my favorite game.
Okay, there you go. That's funny. That's very funny. I think I still want to try it out, because I think it would just be ironic for us to play a game like that right now without being too facetious about the time that we're living in at this point. But just to be able to smile about some things in life. And I actually wonder, do you think that leisure, recreation, play is something that could help a lot of people right now during a time of high anxiety and high stress?
I think it can. I think it's still challenging because a lot of it still has to be done at a distance. I mean, within family groups and stuff, definitely. And if there's an opportunity to gather in some capacity, then definitely. But there's also a lot of online options. I know, like for people who like board games, you can do tabletop simulator, or which is like a simulation. You can play any game kind of on this virtual table.
Oh,
And there's
seriously?
yeah, and there's like video
So you're
games.
saying I can play a tabletop game
Hmm.
simulator with like my family in England?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on a second. Ken Thiessen is showing us a game that I've never heard of it at all. It's called Replace My Deck. Oh, that's not a game, Ken Thiessen. You're just trying to get us to come work. That's funny. Here I am thinking he's all serious about games options. Ken, I knew you had an angle.
But going back into like the idea of rest and that kind of stuff, even for like people who are outside of the church who examine the lives of Christians, like do they see a life, a family that has life, or like like a church body that exudes life within itself? Do we take time for rest? Do we have fun with one another? And like even using those things to draw people in is like there's often been life groups based around certain subjects of leisure, which draws people in because there's something that they know or something that they can feel connected to in order to build into each other for Christ. And so I think that in leisure, there's an opportunity for ministry and for just doing life well with one another.
Yeah. So, do you think that there's room for saying that that even Sabbath can have the opportunity to draw people to Jesus, right? Like the notion of Sabbath as outreach, even in
Hmm.
a weird way, right?
Yeah, definitely. Things that you enjoy, somebody else might also enjoy, or you may be able to teach somebody to enjoy that same thing, and that may be
Teach
an
them to enjoy it.
yeah, it may be an entrance point for them for you to also be able to share the gospel. Having that repertoire built from doing things that you love together gives you an entryway to spread the gospel to somebody.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, because even just the idea of allowing our interests, allowing the ways that we unwind, relax, can be something that can invite somebody else into that space, an opportunity to be able to share Jesus with them at the same time, but recognizing that that we're still in need of that space of rest, right? I like what Sheila says here. Now, this is, I think, a really legitimate form of recreation, a legitimate form of leisure. And Sheila, I have definitely benefited from hearing you play your accordion. And we've jokingly, Tyler, I don't know if you know this, but we, Sheila and I have jokingly talked about getting a distortion pedal for her accordion in the past. This was a couple of years ago, but I still think that there's room for a distortion pedal for an accordion. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
And that's a skill people can really enjoy as well. Like I know people who love hearing the accordion. You know, my grandparents being one of them, and yeah, it's something that adds to adds to people. Not just it's not even just it's maybe a personal thing, but it can also be for others as well.
Oh, I agree. There's a number of years back when we were living in our first house out here. There was a gentleman that lived just across the street, and he would come out. I think it was every Sunday afternoon, and he would be sitting on his deck or his front porch rather, and he was just playing the accordion. He's playing all these old hymns, and there was just something. I don't know. There was just something about it that when you go, your windows open and you could hear that going on. It was awesome. There you go. We hear it. You heard it here, everybody. Sheila Thiessen would love an electric accordion. I mean, that'd be amazing. Get going on some striper. You know, that'd be amazing. That'd be awesome. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know. I hope this isn't a dig, but I know there's quite a few videos on YouTube where if you play the accordion outside of a fence, the cows come running because they love hearing the sound of an accordion. So Sheila, I would say that you should
is that
definitely,
true?
yeah, apparently. I've seen lots of videos about it. So Sheila, I would encourage you to try it, and I would definitely love to see if that's true or not.
Oh, okay. So here we go. This is a good question. Missed the first part of a bit of this chat, so maybe you covered this. But what is your thought on the second part of the Sabbath command about keeping it holy? I love that question because the notion of keeping it holy, of course, is to keep it God centered, right? Like it needs to be something that does not take away from who He is. Does not take away from what he has called us into. I think Philippians 4:8 speaks into that really well. Here's what it says. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And I think that when we're talking about that second part of the Sabbath, like to keep it holy, I think if that's our mindset, if our mindset is literally on those things, um, like the Philippians 4:8 kind of mindset, I think we are able to sit down, play a board game on the Sabbath with family and friends, and be able to do that, provided that again we are being honorable and praiseworthy, and we're being noble, and like all those characteristics that we're called into. This whole notion of holiness being an aspect of every part of our being. I think that's important as we talk about rest. Because I do believe that the Lord provided that Sabbath day of rest for our sake. I mean, we know the Lord doesn't need to rest, so that's certainly for our sake. And then in doing so, there is this space for us to be able to unwind from the day, right? Like 6 days to work, 1 day to rest is what he says, right? So there's a space for us to unwind, but how we unwind matters, right? And so if we go into that Philippians 4:8 mindset, again, like whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure and lovely, admirable, anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And I think that's a good way to move forward as we're talking about how do we honor the Sabbath and how do we allow those things to be restorative for us, right? Because I would suggest this. If we follow the Philippians 4:8 mindset in how we practice our leisure, our recreation, in our Sabbath, I do believe that it would be God honoring, but I also think that it would be even more restorative because there's no room for negative thinking in that. No room for hostility. There's no room for unforgiveness. There's no room for any of that stuff. And so I think there's something beautiful about that. I don't know, Melissa, is that helpful? Hopefully. Sheila does say, though, going back to her accordion questions, that she is willing to take donations to help her get an electric accordion. And there's, I don't know, Sheila, I just want to see you rip on one. I think that'd be amazing. I actually think that would be really incredible. Um, so yeah, that's good.
Going back to Melissa's comment, like maybe doesn't apply just to the Sabbath either, but like using our leisure activities, sometimes we need to be careful about letting our leisure activities become the main thing in our life above, like like making sure it doesn't come in place of God to fill our deepest need. Leisure things are, I think, are definitely there to help us enjoy life, but I don't think that they're meant to be our life.
Yeah, that's a great point. A really great point. Because at the end of the day, um, anything that displaces God is an idol, right? And so, I know a lot of people that, we accuse of this as men quite a bit, right? Like the sports thing, right? I had this conversation with somebody just the other day. I know people who know the statistics of their favorite sports teams more than they know the stats in their Bible. And I think that that's a difficult thing to reconcile for me. Like we need to make sure. Yes, there's this space of enjoyment that the Lord has given us. I think actually as a gift, like every good and perfect gift comes from the Father of lights, right? Um, and so I do believe that leisure, enjoyment, laughter, pleasure comes from the Lord. But I also think that the evil one comes along and twists it so that it becomes the focus rather than the Lord who provided it to us being the focus. So I love that point. That's a really good point, Tyler. Thank you for that. That's excellent. Hey, has anybody got any other questions out there about this? I know this is a conversation that we don't have very often, talking about how do we deal with leisure and relaxation? How do we deal with the Sabbath? And how do we honor the Lord in the Sabbath? Because that's critical, right? Like we are a people who are called, especially on the day of Sabbath, to honor the Lord and set that time aside to make sure that we are honoring Him. I know we talk about leisure, but I will tell you this: not being able to, like, having the restrictions on meeting in person as church has impacted me greatly. Now that we've been able to have people back together, I will tell you that there is something about that decompresses my stress. Being present with other believers just does amazing things for me. Um, Somebody asked me the other day, because now we're running the two services, like one in the morning, one in the evening, and they asked, how's that been going? And I will be honest with you, I feel invigorated by it because there's just something about, I think anyway, honoring the Lord on the Sabbath, but also doing that with others is something significant. Now, it's not that you can't do it online. Excuse me, I'm not saying that at all, because we've been able to do that. But for me personally, as a very extroverted person who's very social, there's just something for me that I find a lot of value in that as well. And so even that, like our expression on the Sabbath day, what does it look like for us to honor the Lord on that day? I think is critical to our understanding of the day of rest. Like, because I do believe that it is inviting us towards Him, not just inviting Him towards us. Do you know what I mean? And so there's this idea of, how do I focus on the Lord in these spaces where I am to be recuperating from the week and honoring Him in that. I think those are important. What do you think, Tyler?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And I think yeah, being a part, like, I mean, I thought of a different subject. I don't want to take away from this right away, but I definitely think so. Like being together has been awesome. Just being able to see people and to just, yeah, just know that we're all there, and to just to see each other again, it's just been awesome.
Great. What was your other thought? I'm curious.
Well, I had done a little bit of looking earlier on today, and it was just talking about how humans are hardwired to kind of to have play within themselves. So they do, like, humans play and they have leisure and all that kind of stuff, and how social media can take the place of that, and kind of like how our social interactions are that play type thing. With TikTok, I don't think it's a coincidence that most of the videos are based on humor or social kind of interactions between people, because we have that play tendency. And I think that if we can find it in places that we don't necessarily think we are finding it, but like things like TikTok or Instagram, where we're finding things that interest us, or that we're kind of exercising that play, but in a way that's very on a screen
Public.
type. Yeah, I'm just like kind of evaluating, like, oh, like, what do I have a need for something somewhere else? Is that why I'm feeling it here, kind of thing? And I just thought
Hmm.
that was interesting place, or
That
interesting
is
thought.
interesting. I've never. I don't do TikTok. I'm apparently I'm old now, uh, and so I don't. Don't totally understand it. Somebody told me that TikTok was basically a bunch of people dancing. Uh, and just you're scrolling through a bunch of people dancing. And so yeah, no, I'm okay. I don't I don't need to check that out. But you're right. I think there's something to that. The idea of what does social media do, um, to either build or take away from relationship that can help us in those spaces where we need to rest. I think the whole idea of connection, at whatever level a person needs it, right? Like some people need a large number of people to feel connected to. Some people need just a few people to feel connected to. The notion of leisure with those people matters. Here's an example of what I mean. So, do a lot of marriage counseling and work with a lot of couples. It is amazing to me. Like we do this assessment to determine how, like, what areas of their relationship they find um, satisfaction in, what areas maybe need to be tweaked a bit, and almost every single time, the leisure activities area of their relationship is something that needs to be worked on. It's the idea that we're doing things together with other people, that brings life into the relationship. It brings new story into the relationship, some extra measure of engagement within the relationship, and I think that there's something really important to that. Like within the context of the marriage relationship, it's the whole idea of, for men specifically, if I can laugh with you, I can trust you, right? Like if I can laugh with you, it means I can be comfortable with you, and then I can trust you more, and I can be in that space. But the studies have been telling us that the number two need for a man. Are you ready? This is great. You're gonna love this. Number two need for a man is a playmate. The idea of when you so I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Tyler.
Okay,
We all know you're in a wonderful dating relationship with an excellent young woman.
I don't know if we all knew that, but they do now.
We do now. Okay. I ask married couples this all the time, specifically to the men. When you think of having a new experience or an absolute incredibly wonderful time where you're experiencing joy and laughter and all these kinds of things, who do you imagine beside you? And almost every single time, it's their spouse. What do you think, Ty? Would
I
you
mean,
imagine her beside you?
what's that?
Do you imagine her beside you?
Uh, yes, sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have found the bashful side of young Tyler Blatz.
Real. Thanks. Good night.
No, but there is something I think just wired within us, this desire for play, this is desire for leisure, and connecting that to our understanding of Sabbath, I think, is critical. Absolutely critical. Naomi says it well. She says that, the whole idea that um, God's designed us to be in relationship. I think that's absolutely true. Relationship with Him, relationship with others, and those things are absolutely critical. It doesn't mean that every person needs to be married. So please don't understand that, because Paul talks about marriage as something wonderful, but he talks about singleness as a gift from the Lord. And so let's not, demean that at all. But there is something about play and leisure as it relates to Sabbath. I believe that we can absolutely honor the Lord in our leisure, in our recreation. I believe that's part of the intention of Sabbath, the day of rest. And it's defined as a day of rest because it's in comparison to the 6 days of work, right? And so there's this day of rest, this day of enjoyment, and that we enjoy the Lord and we enjoy, you know, our His creation, and we enjoy being in relationship with each other. There is this incredible joy that comes along in recreation. So maybe that could be something that will round out our understanding of Sabbath, right? We've said earlier, there are people who just don't know what to do on Sabbath. And so they think, yeah, okay, so I'm going to go to church. That's part of my Sabbath expression. And I would say, absolutely. Um, we need to honor the Lord in that. But I think that it's also important that whether you're going out into nature and enjoying that, whether you are gathering with other people, family members, friends, and playing board games together, whether you're, whatever it is that you are doing, that it would be honoring to the Lord as well, because He's the one who gifted this to you. So let's remember then Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And it's this idea of I am going to fix my attention on those things. And I think as we do that, Sabbath day is honored, the Lord is honored, and we are restored. I think that's pretty cool. But I didn't even know we were going to head in that direction tonight. That's pretty neat. What are your takeaways? If you were to think, Tyler, if you were to think of, let's say, one takeaway that you would like to, take away from this particular conversation, what would it be? And while you're thinking about that, we got this comment here from Kate. I think people are in search of satisfying their hole inside, and it's a hole that just God can fill. Yeah, Kate, I 100% agree with you. It is that, there's that old saying, right, that every person on the planet has a God-shaped hole that they're trying to fill in their heart. And I absolutely agree that that's part of this whole thing. Absolutely. So, Tyler, what is a takeaway for you from this conversation tonight?
I think it's just the realization that God has made us to have fun and to have moments of like just fun and enjoyment with one another. That it's not just it's meant to be a day that blends into other days, but it's supposed to be a day it's supposed to be a life that has spontaneity and kind of like this fun atmosphere that God just put in us because it was His design to do so, and it was a good thing. I think we can use that fun and that happiness to both be rested and to share the gospel with others.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. I mean, and I don't know how often we think about the idea that as created beings, right, we're created in the image of God. And part of the way that He has created us is to experience joy, it's to experience pleasure, is to experience laughter and play, which I think is a dimension of God that we don't often think of. The fact that the Lord delights, that He has joy. Um, I don't know. There's just something about that that brings a smile to my face. And I think that's probably a good way for us to end this. We're created in the image of the Lord, which means our laughter comes from Him. Our capacity to laugh comes from Him. The enjoyment we have with others comes from Him. All of this, I truly believe this. Absolutely. This is really well said. God loves to have fun.
That's my
Absolutely.
cousin.
That's your cousin?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Hey, Justin, you're absolutely right. God loves to have fun. And I think that there's just something beautiful about that. And so, to that end, thanks everyone for joining us this evening. I hope that you were blessed by this, that we were able to enjoy our time together. And as you consider this Sabbath day coming up, this Sunday coming up, maybe consider what it could look like for you to certainly, we want to make sure that we're on that spiritual side, that we're practicing a collective time as church, as a body of believers worshiping the Lord together in whatever way that you're able to. If you're able to meet in person, fantastic. And, if you're able to meet online, fantastic. Whatever that is, join together with others to be able to honor the Lord. But then in the rest of the day, follow that Philippians 4:8 and enjoy His creation and enjoy the relationships that He has given you to be able to sustain and to be sustained by. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great remainder of your week, and we look forward to seeing you potentially next week. Talk to you later.